There's a kind of silence that comes after everything burns. Not peace, just emptiness. The sound of a man standing in the ashes of what used to be his life. He looks around and sees only ruin. The dream he built gone. The people he trusted gone. The version of himself that once believed everything would work out gone too. They say time heals all wounds. But time can't heal what fire destroys. You don't rebuild from that. You start over. And that's where he was at zero. No strength left. No answers. Just smoke and silence. He tried to pray, but no words came. He tried to cry, but no tears fell. He tried to fight, but who was he fighting anymore? For months, he walked through the motions, breathing, working, pretending. But inside he was gone. Until one night, he found himself staring into the mirror, eyes hollow, hands shaking. And for the first time, he whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore." That's when he heard it. Not a voice, but realization. Maybe that's the point. Maybe life wasn't trying to punish him. Maybe it was trying to purify him. Because what if the fire didn't come to end you, but to expose what was never truly you? Maybe you needed to lose it all, to find a part of you that couldn't be burned away. Fire, because every person you admire, every name that echoes through time, they were all forged in something painful. You just never saw their fire. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. When life took everything from you, what did it leave behind? Comment below, because somewhere in that answer is the spark you need to rise again. Before the fire, he thought he knew who he was. He had plans, ambition, confidence. He spoke like a man certain of his place in the world. He had a career that gave him identity, friends who gave him validation, and a dream that gave him direction. But sometimes, life waits until you're comfortable, then pulls the ground right out from under you. It started small. One setback here, a missed opportunity there, a relationship that slowly began to drift. But that's how fire begins, not with a roar, but with a spark. He ignored the signs. He told himself he could handle it, that every struggle was just another test of endurance. He smiled when people asked how he was doing. He said, "I'm fine." But inside, he was unraveling. Then it all came crashing down. Suddenly, brutally, completely. The business he'd built collapsed overnight. The people he thought would stand with him disappeared. And the life he'd once called mine turned to dust in his hands. He kept replaying it in his mind. How one decision, one misstep, could erase everything he'd worked for. Nights turned into weeks. Weeks into months. He tried to rebuild, but nothing worked. Every door he knocked on stayed shut. Every prayer felt unanswered. He was surrounded by silence, the kind that makes you question if you've been forgotten. There were mornings he couldn't even get out of bed. Because when your identity burns, it's not just the world around you that turns to ashes. It's the you used to believe in. And yet, deep inside, something small refused to die. A whisper, a flicker, a quiet voice that said, "This can't be the end." He didn't know what it meant. He didn't have a plan. But something in him began to shift. He started walking again, one step at a time. Not because he believed he could win again, but because standing still hurt worse. He'd go for long walks at night, talking to himself. Not praying for things to go back, but asking for the strength to move forward. He started journaling. Started reading stories of people who'd lost everything and rose again. That's when he realized something profound. Maybe greatness isn't built in victory, but in recovery. Maybe the truest version of yourself only emerges when the world strips away everything else. That thought became his oxygen. He didn't know how long it would take. He didn't even know what he was becoming. But he knew this. He was done being the man who broke. If he had to walk through fire to find himself again, then so be it. Because maybe this time, he wouldn't just survive it. Maybe this time, he'd become it. They say pressure makes diamonds. But before it makes anything beautiful, it breaks what's weak. And that's exactly what the fire did to him. It didn't just burn what he had. It burned who he was. Every day felt like a fight with himself. His mind told him to keep believing, but his heart was tired of disappointment. He'd wake up with determination, and go to bed with doubt. There were nights he'd stare at the ceiling, whispering, "Why me? Why was it always him who lost? Why did the people who gave less seem to win more? Why did God stay silent when he needed answers the most?" He started to resent everything. The world, his past, even himself. He became bitter, sharp, restless. He stopped picking up calls, stopped responding to messages. The man who once lit up every room now couldn't stand to face his own reflection. And that's what pain does. It isolates you. It convinces you that you're the only one drowning, that no one could ever understand your fire. But the truth is, the fire doesn't isolate you to destroy you. It isolates you to expose you. Because when you're stripped of everything you thought made you strong, the job, the success, the validation, you finally come face to face with the one thing that can't be burned away, the core of who you are. And that's where he found himself, at rock bottom, but face to face with truth. He realized he spent most of his life chasing the image of success, not the substance of strength. He was driven by fear of being nothing, not by purpose. He wanted to be admired, not transformed. The fire showed him that difference. It humbled him. It broke his ego like glass. And from that breaking came clarity. One night, while walking alone in the cold, he found himself near an old abandoned workshop. Dust, rust, forgotten tools scattered everywhere. He stepped inside, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he started cleaning. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was symbolism. But as he swept the dust off that floor, it felt like he was sweeping the ashes off his soul. He found an old anvil in the corner, heavy, solid, unmoved by time. He ran his hand across it, and for the first time in months, he smiled. That's when he understood this is what life was doing to him. The fire wasn't punishment. It was a forge. He was the metal. The pain was the heat. And the hammer? That was every moment that tried to break him. He wasn't losing. He was being shaped. Tears filled his eyes, not from sadness, but from revelation. He whispered, "If this is a fire, then let it burn everything that's fake. Let it burn my fear. Let it burn my pride. And when it's done, let what remains be real." That night, something in him shifted. The bitterness faded. The anger quieted. And in its place came resolve. He didn't know how long the fire would last, but he finally understood its purpose. The fire wasn't meant to destroy him. It was meant to refine him. And refinement hurts. It strips you raw. It demands everything. But it gives you something priceless in return. A self that cannot be shaken. Fire comment below. Have you ever gone through something that felt like it was breaking you, only to realize later it was building you? Your voice might be the spark someone else needs tonight. The thing about the fire is, you never walk out at the same. You either come out bitter, or you come out born again. And for the first time in a long time, he was starting to feel alive. Not because life suddenly got easier. It didn't. He still had bills to pay. He still had scars that hadn't healed. He still had nights when sleep wouldn't come. But something inside him had shifted. He stopped seeing the fire as punishment. He started seeing it as preparation. He realized that every time life burned something away, it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Because when everything unnecessary is stripped from you, you finally discover what's essential. He began waking up earlier, not to chase success, but to build discipline. He didn't pray for miracles anymore. He prayed for endurance. He didn't ask for an easier path. He asked for stronger feet. That's when he noticed something strange. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of failure. Not of rejection. Not of being misunderstood. Because once you've walked through fire, you stop fearing the heat. You realize that nothing out there can hurt you more than what you've already survived inside. He began taking small steps again, starting projects he'd abandoned, reaching out to people he'd pushed away, believing again even when it didn't make sense. Each day became a test, not of luck, but of faith. Not blind faith in circumstances, but faith in himself. He'd look in the mirror now. Same eyes, same face, but a different fire behind them. He started writing notes to himself on scraps of paper. "You've survived worse. Keep walking. This pain has purpose. He taped them to his wall, his mirror, his door. Every day he read them out loud, not because he believed them, but because he needed to. And slowly, the word began to stick. He started feeling what he was saying. He started believing again. One afternoon, while working out, he caught his reflection in the mirror, sweat dripping, muscles trembling, eyes locked, and something clicked. He said softly, "You made it through the fire." Then louder, "You made it through the fire." And for the first time in months, he smiled. Not the smile of someone who'd won, but of someone who'd survived. He finally understood. The fire wasn't there to prove his strength. It was there to create it. That day, he took a notebook and wrote one line across the first page. The fire didn't destroy me. It defined me. From that moment, he carried that truth like armor. Every time life tried to knock him back down, he remembered what the fire had taught him. Fire that comfort doesn't build character. Fire that loss doesn't mean the end. Fire that silence doesn't mean abandonment. Fire and that sometimes pain is just potential in disguise. He was no longer the man who feared life's heat. He had become it. So when people asked, "How did you survive that?" he simply said, "I stopped trying to escape the fire and started learning from it." Because the truth is, you're not meant to avoid your fire. You're meant to rise through it. The morning he finally walked out of the fire, it wasn't dramatic. There were no trumpets, no applause, no flash of light. Just sunlight spilling through the curtains. Soft, steady, honest. He woke up different that day. Not lighter, not stronger, but clearer. The noise in his head had quieted. The ache in his chest had softened. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't wake up thinking about what he lost. He woke up thinking about what he could build. He made coffee slowly that morning. Watched the steam rise. Watched the sun touch the walls. It felt sacred. The kind of peace that doesn't come from things getting better, but from you getting better. He opened his old notebook, the one he used to fill with pain. This time he wrote something new. "I am not who I was before the fire." And he meant it. He started moving again, not rushing, not forcing, just moving. Step by step, breath by breath. He rebuilt his habits, his health, his focus. He reached out to people he'd lost touch with, not to impress them, but to reconnect from a place of truth. He got back to work. But the difference was clear. Before, he worked to prove something. Now he worked to create something. Before, he chased validation. Now he chased value. Every action was intentional. Every decision carried purpose. Every mistake became a lesson, not a label. He learned to rest without guilt, to breathe without rushing, to fail without quitting, to rise without needing applause. And slowly, the world started to notice. People began asking, "What changed?" He just smiled and said, "I did." Because that's the truth most people miss. Your world changes when you do. You don't wait for the storm to pass. You become the calm inside it. The same people who once doubted him started calling for advice. The same doors that once shut in his face began to open again. But this time, he walked through them differently, with humility in his stride and gratitude in his heart. He no longer feared loss, because he'd already lived through it. He no longer chased approval, because he'd already met himself in the dark. He'd been burned, yes, but now he burned brighter. And that's the thing about people who survive their fire. They don't shine the same way anymore. Their light is softer, warmer, realer, because it's not a light that comes from success. It's a light that comes from survival. He started speaking to others now, not preaching, but sharing. His story became a bridge, a reminder that pain doesn't have to be permanent, and that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. He ended every talk with the same words. The fire didn't take me. It taught me. And for that, I'm grateful. And maybe that's where true power begins. Not when you escape the fire, but when you thank it. Fire call to action. If this part spoke to your soul, drop a fire in the comments. And before you go, remember, your fire has a purpose. You are being refined, not ruined. Speech balloons share this video with someone walking through their storm. Headphone subscribe to Echo Rise for more stories that remind you, you are not done. You are becoming. He stood on the hill where it all began. The city spread out below him, the horizon glowing with the same golden fire that once terrified him. He closed his eyes and breathed deep. The air felt different now. Not heavy, not suffocating. Alive. The man who once cursed the fire now thanked it, because he finally understood something the pain had been trying to tell him all along. Sometimes the destruction you fear most is the only thing strong enough to reveal who you were meant to be. He thought back to those long, sleepless nights, to the ache, the loss, the questions that had no answers. He remembered how he begged for the fire to stop. But now, he was grateful it didn't, because if the fire had stopped early, he would have remained half-formed, strong enough to survive, but not enough to soar. That's what the fire does. It doesn't just take what's fake. It purifies what's real. He remembered every scar, every moment he thought he'd never recover, every prayer whispered through tears. And he realized those moments were his making. He whispered, "If I had never been broken, I would have never been built." That's when the weight lifted. The final piece of who he used to be burned away in the quiet acceptance of who he had become. He looked up at the sky and smiled. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. He didn't need to chase or compete. He was enough. Not because life was perfect, but because he was still standing. And that was a victory all along. He turned to walk back down the hill. Not the same man who started this journey, but the one the fire had forged. He carried no bitterness, no fear, no regret, only wisdom, gratitude, and peace. Every step echoed a truth the fire had written into his bones. Fire strength isn't born in comfort. Fire peace isn't found in safety. Fire purpose doesn't appear in success. It's forged in struggle. He wasn't just walking away from a fire. He was walking with it, carrying its lessons in every heartbeat. Because once you face your fire, you never walk alone again. You carry its light inside you. And that light, it's what others see when they look at you and say, "There's something different about you." Yes, there is. You've been forged. So if you're listening to this right now, and you're standing in your own flames, don't give up. Don't run. Don't curse the fire. Let it shape you. Let it refine you. Let it strip away everything that isn't real, until only truth remains. Because one day, you'll stand where he stands. You'll look back and realize you weren't being punished. You were being prepared. And when that moment comes, you'll finally see it. The beauty in the burn, the purpose in the pain, the grace in the fire. Because not everyone survives their flames. But those who do, glow. If you walk through your own fire and come out stronger, write in the comments, "I am forged." Speech balloons share this story with someone who's still in their fire. Remind them they're not alone. Headphone subscribe to Echo Rise Motivational TV for more stories that ignite your strength and awaken your purpose. Together, we rise.